Yeah.
Woo!
There you go. All right.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now we can see you guys.
Good. Can you hear us as well?
Yes, we
Excellent.
can. Okay, let's go ahead and kick this off. Welcome everyone to the 9th edition of our Service Fabric Community Q&A. And as we can see, the team is all ready to answer your questions. So you can start placing your questions in the chat window, and let's get started, guys.
Yeah. So thanks, Mark. We actually have a bit of a different plan today.
Okay.
Surprise.
So we actually got one of the community members, Mikael, who's always online, and he just want to spend 10 minutes showing us something he's provided into the community to help all Service Fabric devs.
Awesome.
And please, for everyone else on the call, if you have stuff you think is if you have stuff and you want to share it, let us know, and we can give you a slot in these community calls for a 10-minute presentation of what you've done and provided to the community. So please let us know. Just paste in the chat window or reach out, and we want to do that.
Yeah, send us mail, let us know, whatever.
Yeah. So Mikael, over to you.
You there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you. Yes, very good.
Hi guys, and thanks for the invite from Mikkel to let me show you what I have been brewing on after spending, I think, the last year working with the Service Fabric in different projects. So let me start by sharing my screen, because I think it's much easier to understand if you see some code along the way. Can you see my screen?
Coming through, connecting.
Yep, there you go.
Okay, then let me jump over to a familiar place. And can you see Visual Studio?
Yep, yes,
Yes.
you can.
Yeah, okay. So let me start by saying I created a small NuGet package called Service Fabric Autorest, and it is a small communication library that is able to leverage Autorest generated client libraries inside Service Fabric, and is something you typically would want to use in a service-to-service communication scenario. And I don't know how many, if you're familiar with the Autorest tool provided by, I think, the Asia team, but basically it leverages the new Swagger specification, which is basically become I would say a de facto standard for describing your REST APIs and making it quite easy to both document what your REST APIs do and actually start to develop against. So, for example, if you have multiple teams working on different Service Fabric applications or services, you could use Swagger to document your APIs and have other teams consume them. So in order to easily add Swagger to a web API, one could go in and use something called Swashbuckle, which is I think one of the more famous packages that can add Swagger documentation to a ASP.NET web API. And once that is done, you can go in and download Autorest, or you could even go ahead and use the Visual Studio tooling and add, as far as I know, some place here you can go in here and add REST API clients, and you just start pointing to a Swagger URL or a file, and you can have code auto-generated. And once that is done, you can take the package I created, plug it in a client service that will consume some of the other services, and start to leverage the strongly typed nature of the generated client code. And hopefully despite my resolutions, you can see the Solution Explorer here, where I have two different projects where I have used Autorest to generate code that's based on this Swagger file. And one is a client library to contact a stateless service, and the other for a stateful service. And inside here, my sample Service Fabric application, you can see, of course, you have the Service Fabric project, and then we have three services. We have the stateless service as well as a stateful service with configured with two partitions. And to demonstrate my the usage of my packets, I have a client service that will need to communicate with these two services and leverage these static, strongly typed clients. So let me start the app, and I'll move over to code. How long do I have left?
You're fine. You're good.
You're good.
Okay. So
Building and publishing is like just, split second thing.
Right.
So-
Then, yeah,
No-
it'll
no
grow
ang-
very
No
fast.
anxiety there. That's
No,
that's good. Yeah.
I practiced more than once. Okay, so while it's loading up, hopefully everything is all green. And in here we have the application, my three services, and just to show that the stateful service backend has two partitions. And I actually enabled for the stateful one that there should be secondaries can be read from, meaning that it's possible to actually load balance any GET requests towards the stateful API to all the replicas. So let me go to my my client service, which is located at localhost port 80. And let me start by, if I simply want to contact one of the other services, in this case, I will be hitting my client service that will then, yes, go on and communicate with the, in this case, the stateless. And it actually responds. So let's just quickly dive over and see what actually happened here. Is I have here a stateless controller, and if I make it rather grand, this is the code needed in order to communicate from my client service with the backend stateless service. So I have here the service UI, which is the Fabric naming scheme. I register a communication factory, where here I specify my strongly typed client, and inside my get, I get a partition client, which is this actually the same type as provided by Service Fabric. And inside here, I actually get a strongly typed version of the API I want to communicate with. Just quickly going back, what about stateful? In this case, I actually pass on a value to the stateful, and as you can see, I actually get a response back stating the internal API, the internal URL that called. And if I try to refresh a few times, you see that this part, which is the replica ID, changes. And going over to my stateful controller. You can see that it is quite familiar. It also has the option to inject custom handlers and also handle the secured APIs that is a native thing to auto-rest generated clients. So in this example, I could actually inject a bearer token if my backend my backend service was secured with a OAuth. And the final thing I want to show before I think I will leave this demo is actually one thing that I found lacking in the communication client namespace that comes with Service Fabric, and that is actually that the Service Partition Client lacks a interface. So if I wanted to have easy dependency injection into my controller, I have actually made that option here. So going back to my IOC controller, I try to show you that in this case, all I did here was I configured the Unity IOC container, and here I actually just specify I want an instance of iRest Service Partition Client for my stateless client, and then I can start communicating and leveraging the name resolution and the retry strategies built into the standard Service Partition Client and Communication Client factory. I think that will conclude my demo. Hopefully it gave a brief overview. I know it's a narrow use case, but you can find it here on NuGet. There's even all the source code on GitHub with a small explanation how to get started. And the sample that I've been showing also is available, and hopefully some more explanation for this will come soon.
Cool.
And I think the 10 minutes is more or less up.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Cool.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. That's the kind of
And
stuff.
keep the question coming.
So the code that you wrote is an implementation of that communication client factory that wraps the auto-generated Swagger client.
Exactly.
Okay.
And one thing that I learned the hard way was that auto-rest generated clients by themselves actually has a retry strategy enabled by default.
Oh, they do.
So when you have multiple layers of retry strategy, then the timings get exponentially quite large before you.
That can lead to some trouble if you didn't know that.
Yeah. So I learned the hard way.
Then you wrap Polly around that one.
Yeah.
Oh, you'll never call anything.
No, exactly.
That's fantastic.
Cool. Yeah,
Cool.
that's really cool.
Thanks.
That's great stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Great, let's dive into question time.
Yeah, Q&A time. What do we got? Oh yeah.
We just have 3 links up there. Just want to highlight at least the new monitoring and diagnostics article, the top row. Go take a look at that, and then of course the usual support options and commonly asked questions articles as well.
Yeah, the monitoring and diagnostics one's quite important because that's taking us down the direction of using event flow for acting as all the syncs for different inputs, like whether you write out to event source or iLogger, and then outputs, whether it goes to App Insights or Elk or whatever your choices are. And we're going to be using that going forward in all our templates as we look towards them. So read that one.
Do we want to start going through these?
Yes.
My face will be the face too close to the camera for this week, so apologies in advance.
Tag.
Tag. Service Fabric reverse proxy and WebSockets. Do you have any plans for supporting WebSockets and Service Fabric reverse proxy?
They're supported today. They are.
Yeah, I thought they were too.
Yeah.
So yes, there are plans. As far as we know, it works. If it isn't working, maybe put some things in the Service Fabric issues list to let us know what you're not seeing.
Yes.
Or what you think is missing, or anything that's not working.
And you can find the issues list in the support options article.
Yes. And this thing is going to keep skipping around on me. All right. Let's see what the second part here. Thinking about different patterns and pushing back notification through WebSockets. Having experience. Yeah, actually, a couple of our examples, not through the reverse proxy, but a couple of our. Doesn't the good old-fashioned visual object still use WebSockets?
Yeah, that one does WebSockets just between a client browser and a stateless web service in Service Fabric, and then the stateless web service talks to a set of actors over actor proxy. So the stateless service does a bunch of aggregation of data from actors and then just pumps that out through a WebSocket back to the browser. So that's up on GitHub. That's in our Getting Started samples repo if you want to take a look at that. And then we have a more sophisticated WebSocket example too. It's our data streaming example you can look at too. Yeah, that one's a little more complex, but if you want some WebSocket examples, we definitely have them.
That's the one that's classed as our Service Fabric media library, isn't it? That one.
No, that's the one that uses Azure ML machine learning, and then sends data back onto the browser from there. Or at least it can. You can plug it in.
Okay. Let's get to Gary. All right.
Yeah.
Is it going to keep happening? Yeah, it's this fun part. That's fine.
When using guest containers?
When using guest containers.
Let me
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Manny.
When using guest containers, how do you specify Docker run options such as Docker run-b to map a data volume on the host to a specific directory? When will DNS be supported for communication between guest containers?
Okay, so let's do the first one.
Docker V or run V.
Volumes.
Yeah, how do you mount volumes? You can't mount volumes
today.
That feature is coming.
It's coming soon, yeah.
We're doing a whole bunch of work around the containers things, including mounting volumes. I think the mounting volumes will be coming in a release after next. So that's we're just waiting until that. I'm actually about to publish, in fact, I'll publish it today. We have a getting started sample about how to use guest containers and put them inside containers, which we have is a private repo, and I'll just publish it. I'll publish it now. That shows you how to use all of them, because there's some trickery that you have to do in order to get around some NAT issues within inside the containers. But anyway, the sample actually shows you just how to use guest executables on the machine, and then it shows how to take them and wrap them inside containers and publish them inside that.
The second part of the question is regarding DNS support. Again, this is something that's going to be coming in an upcoming release, not the immediate release that's going to come out in the next couple of weeks, but the one after that. That will have DNS, basically a DNS server as a system service, so you can specify a DNS alias and communicate between services or containers that way.
Yeah, and that'll be quite good because the aim of that one is you'll be able to take existing applications that have some URL on them, and so it might have like http:// my domain name / some URL and some port, and unchanged, you can actually just deploy them into Service Fabric and then just use that DNS name to call between your services rather than having to use a fabric name to call between them.
Yeah.
So it helps with this sort of migration of existing domain name spaces.
Though today you can get something very close by just using an environment variable there and just mapping an environment variable. But in case you don't want to touch the container at all, then the DNS server feature is on its way.
Okay. Question from Espen. Service that needs to call a function on a whole bunch of actors, 10,000, later 100,000. Current solution throttles the number of concurrent calls to the actors, but we're still seeing a lot of timeout exceptions on the calling service, about 1/4 of the calls. We've added a poly retry policy on the timeout exceptions now, but that feels not quite right. Do you have any input on how this make work better? So I'm curious. You're seeing the timeouts when you're calling the backing actors, and that's resulting in a timeout on the overall do work call. If that's right, then it sounds like there's maybe multiple calls going into those actors, because that's when the actor would be locked.
Yeah, I'm curious why you're throttling concurrent calls to the actors, because at first it sounds like you create a new actor instance to do the work. So I'm not sure what the concurrent call is. are about. But I mean, the general guidance there is if you have an actor that's doing work, you don't really want to have multiple clients calling it concurrently. That's what leads to those timeouts.
Right, because those actors are single-threaded.
Yeah, because
so
they're single-threaded.
it might, if we're understanding your question right, it probably has something to do with the type of work that's going on inside that actor. If that's blocking and taking a long time for that actor method to complete, and you're trying to ask it, its status or how far along it is, or get an update, or put more work into it, that's not gonna work because that one method is still executing, and you wouldn't want to make that async because that's kicking you outside of that actor single-threaded model. So maybe it's, we've seen these like Monte Carlo type simulation things, right? Where I create thousands and thousands of actors, and then I wait for them when they're complete to call me back.
Yeah, they call you back.
Right.
Exactly.
I'm not trying to pull them.
If you keep trying to pull them, you're gonna hold them up.
Right.
Like every time I ask Matt, what are you doing? He has to drop what he's doing so he could respond to me and then go back to what he was doing again. So
because
I keep asking him, and I do this all the time. That's why he never gets anything done.
Yeah, I'm so shut up. Leave me alone.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
it's
something like
for him to talk to me, then it'd be fine. So maybe
something like that.
If you want to clarify in the chat box, or we can move on to another question in the meantime. If you want to clarify if you're making current calls,
or talk with us, whatever.
Us.
The other thing you could do is if you want to share code or things like that, feel free to drop it onto the GitHub issues. Right, that's a pretty good forum where we can go back and forth and swap code and stuff like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect to see a quarter of your calls being timeouts. So if you're only making a single call to the actor.
And if you're trying to call them concurrently, then that's kind of an application design thing that we can talk with you about to figure out how to maybe do it a little bit differently. Statement on single R, yep. Any plans on having a scheduler API other than reminders in the actor framework? I don't think we have any plans for that right now.
No plans for that right now.
But Miguel, we'd like to know more about what you're thinking there. I usually just write. If I care, I write a stateful service that does the scheduling. If I don't care, I write a stateless service that does the scheduling, spins off all the actors, and then dies. That's typically how we see that solved. Is there a way to migrate stateful actor data from production to a staging environment?
Well, you could do backup and restore.
Yeah.
Take a backup of your production environment. Recreate the exact same environment in staging, same number of partitions and everything, and then invoke the restore APIs to get the data back in. That's one way to do it. Other than that, you just have to write code yourself. So you'd have to write some code in your production environment that exports data out to blob storage or something, and then rehydrate it in your.
And yeah, we've seen people do things where the actor writes its data periodically or under some condition or under when it's invoked in a particular way, just something like DocDB or some other backing store, table store.
That's usually pretty common for analytics anyways. Yeah. But actually what I just described of writing some code to write your actor state out to external storage and then rehydrate back in, that's actually exactly what backup and restore does.
Yeah, that's all
maybe
that really
that's easier.
Yeah. Either way.
Maybe just use that.
Yeah. But that's kind of how we would say to do it.
Yeah.
Question from Gary. For container communication, you mentioned the use of environment variables for name resolution. It wasn't clear from the article online how this works. Does the approach only work when communicating via the reverse proxy? And can you explain in general detail how it works?
I will publish a sample in the link window now that will show how to do it.
You've already published. You published your sample while you were sitting here.
I published my sample.
Excellent multitasking.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very good.
So let me get
that is just in time sample publishing. That's what we.
So instead of actually putting the DNS server name in the container, you put the environment variable inside the container, and then you map that in your application manifest. So
and then when I read the environment variable, I'm getting what?
You map your environment variable to the DNS server name or whatever you want. So when you read it, you'll get that.
Okay. And then you're not necessarily bound to the reverse proxy was his question.
No, yeah.
Can you release some docs on deployment or some samples so it is possible to write your own staging automation for non-Azure deployment? Yeah, David, I've actually got a pull request out to the health metrics sample, the Service Fabric data aggregation sample that shows how you would write some basic scripts to do these types of deployments. It shows all the primitives. I'm not saying it's how you would normally do the F5 experience inside of Visual Studio. It kind of works around that tooling. Sorry, Mikhail. But it does show calling all the actual APIs kind of in the order that you would need to in order to do application package creation, deployment, registration, starting an upgrade, all that different stuff.
Oh, you can actually also look at the IoT sample we have up. That has a custom deployment script too, because its deployment scenario is outside of outside of what Visual Studio gives you. Sorry, Michael, again.
Sorry.
The Visual Studio experience is awesome, but sometimes you need to go beyond that. So the IoT example goes beyond that, and there's a pretty big PowerShell script that just does the whole deployment for you, does registration of application types, create instances, and whatnot. So maybe take a look at that one too. So yeah, we have at least a couple up there you can look at.
And I wonder, maybe, David, if we misunderstood your question specifically since you said non-Azure deployments, because nothing about what we just talked about really changes.
It doesn't matter where you're deploying to. It's just it's just an endpoint.
But maybe it's setting up clusters is why I ask.
Oh, I see.
So maybe if we got that wrong and answered something that was really important, but definitely not your actual question, let us know.
If you're asking about like the alternative to ARM to go and deploy a cluster on-prem, that's different than what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We're talking about deploying applications to an existing cluster.
Yeah.
So let us know if that's.
Okay. Question from Nick. This is regarding back and restore in the scenario of entire service loss. The XA first deploy the service, and then you start Service Fabric partition data loss to trigger on data loss and get SF restoring. What if we have that service that processes event hub, service bus, something like that, and we need to restore to an offset? We don't want the service to start up and start reading from zero. Is there any way to deploy a service that immediately knows it needs to restore? Well, so the way that I would do that, if you have that type of scenario, when a service starts up, if you're starting a service up for the first time, and you know that you might be starting it up in a clean state, but you want it to sync from some specific point, that's not going to be in like the backup and restore stuff, unfortunately. But you could treat it as a data loss. So wipe out the state, and then you have to give it some config that says start from position 25. And that's so you would effectively create a new service with that configuration that knows it needs to start from position 25. And you effectively wipe out the old stuff.
I think he answered his own question for that paragraph. Thing where he needs to basically do the delay stuff.
Yeah, the Service Fabric backup and restore stuff is all kind of all or nothing for a given partition. So if you wanted to have this kind of intermediate stuff where you have to restore to some particular point, you either build it on top or you build it kind of on the side where, say you restore from a backup that you took, you get to some point, and then you have to roll either forward or backward to some point that you're particularly interested in. So that since Service Fabric Backup and Restore is only the whole partition, that's really as much as we get you. And if you want to do something more fine-grained, it kind of needs to be roll your own. So let us know if we answered that one correctly. When can we expect power support for Service Fabric on Linux?
Well, you can interact with the Linux cluster using PowerShell on Windows. We haven't tried it using PowerShell on Linux, but it should work. But I think you're probably the first person who asked me that question.
But give it a shot. If you find things, report them, because then we know that I think we're expecting that PowerShell on Linux is kind of for free because of the other work that's been going on. But if it's not, if you're finding things out, let us know.
Yeah.
Okay, so David clarifies. Yeah, actually cluster.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's see. So getting not application, yes, setting up clusters.
Yeah.
So I think that there are on the standalone docs, aren't there good examples of this stuff? Where's Chaco so we can beat him up?
Yeah.
So what was the question again?
Well, he's looking for example scripts on how to do on-prem cluster deployments. So we have examples of ARM templates, but I don't know if we provide.
Yeah, no. When you deploy the service, when you deploy
not the service, the cluster. Getting cluster stuff.
Yeah, no, but when you deploy the cluster, when you take the on-prem cluster installation, there are 3 example JSON scripts inside there. One for a single dev box, one for a 5-machine cluster, and one for a secure 5-machine cluster. So they are actually in the installation.
Maybe grab the links and send them out.
Yeah, I'll grab the links.
Yeah, Azure CLI is another option for PowerShell type interactions on Linux. You can always use the C# APIs to communicate. You can use the HTTP APIs directly to communicate. All of those are options for controlling the Service Fabric environment on Linux. Thomas, regarding deployment, is aware of automatically managing application manifests and service management's version numbers based on code changes. This is instead of developers remembering to check in what they modified and manually changing the version numbers. Also, is there a VSTS build task that will create a differential deployment?
Well, there is a task in VSTS to do the versioning. the auto versioning. Basically, the concept is that you don't change the version you have in source control, and then when we run this task, we compare the output of the build you just made versus the build you configured, typically the former build, and then we just go and change versions of the individual service manifest and application manifest where it's needed. We don't create diff packages, meaning the package that comes out would always contain all the services.
But only the things that changed would have their versions.
Exactly, and the reason for doing that is that if we created diff packages, you would only be able to deploy it to a specific cluster that had the previous package deployed.
Mm-hmm.
So and that's the thing with diff packages. Yes, you can do those, but you would have to. It's like a transaction log of deployment. You would have to have the diff package deployed in a specific order to get there. So if, let's say, a build output, you want to make that you want to make it available to deploy to multiple environments, then you probably don't want to do diff packages because you can simply get yourself in this situation where you actually can't deploy the package because things are missing.
It's something you might want to. I'd be interested to know kind of what you're interested in using differential deployments for. Is it just because the packages are too big, or you're trying to make sure that you don't change things that you didn't intend to? There's a lot of different reasons why people use differential deployments. If it's just a package size thing, like the copy and registration sequence is taking too long, then one of the things that we do have coming up is the ability to compress those packages, which might, depending upon what exactly is in there, actually save quite a bit of space. We've seen some good success with that. So that's something that...
You can do that today, right?
Yeah, that's something that we allow. I don't know that the VSTS takes advantage of it yet, but it is something that you can do.
You can enable it. The only thing you have to be aware of is that when you go from a non-compressed to a compressed package, it's actually about the cluster being seen as an upgrade. So the first time you go from a non-compressed to a compressed package, you need to make sure you got the versions.
Okay.
And then
but if you are just trying to do an upgrade where you've only changed one package out of a dozen.
Yeah, the versioning is sufficient for that.
Yeah, versioning is sufficient. And VSTS, the build task has or MS Build actually has a flag that says, what is it called? Predictable or something like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't change the binaries when you build. So the DLL is literally the same file. What is it called? Predictable builds?
No, so there's something
deterministic builds.
Yeah, but you need to be aware that the PDBs are not deterministic, and deterministic is not like deterministic. It depends on where you're building and blah blah blah. So if you set up a build definition in VSTS based on the template we provided, today it actually doesn't work because you have to add the deterministic build as a variable to the build definition. But you also need to make sure that between running the tasks that do the version comparison, before you do that, you need to move your PDB files out of the application package because they will always change. We are updating the default build definition template, so if you go and recreate a new one in probably a few weeks from now, it should be set up in a way that it's working. So,
let us know what you see. Marcin got to deterministic builds before we did. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcin.
David, on the cluster deployment, internal info, so you can write your own scripts and automation to deploy scale clusters, so you can write your own automation. Okay, those types of things. So it's more about deploying the cluster and then the operations around managing it and in an automated fashion, so scale up, scale down, stuff like that. I think some of that's coming.
Yeah, okay.
The initial standalone stuff didn't have great support for scale up, scale down operations on the cluster after you deployed it. But now that those scenarios are there, I would expect that documentation to light up.
Yeah, so I mean, we have the cluster setting JSON templates. We just need the scripts around it to actually do it.
Is this on premise?
Yes.
Yeah, the scale up, scale down PowerShells to do that are coming in the next release. So that there are two things actually there. Two PowerShells that help you scale a cluster out and in and do it in a safe manner. And the other one is we're having a service that you can run on the standalone clusters called the update service that will hook into Windows Update on each one of the machines and allow you to do Windows Update patching across the machine. So basically you can turn on we can do on Windows patching across the set of machines in a coordinated fashion. Yeah. So that you don't have all the
Patch Tuesday won't wreck the cluster.
Yes. So you'll see those coming in next. We're continuing to invest a lot on the on-premise one.
It happens, right? I mean,
so you can scale the cluster up and down and do patching on the inside there.
Yvonne asked a question, when will SF be generally available on-prem for Windows? It already is. That's been 6 months or so now.
Ignite.
Ignite last year, yeah. Same question for SF Linux GA on-premise.
So it will be in the second half of this year, probably.
Calendar half.
Yeah, second calendar half.
Yeah.
So probably around September, October timeframe.
Yep. We are actively developing testing SF, but our project is in danger as the dates are unknown to the management. Well, okay. Well, you can go tell them. That solves that problem. That one was easy.
Yeah.
And then what's the actual licensing agreement? The actual licensing agreement is...
No, the on-premise one, it's a free product on premise, yes?
Yeah. May I install SF on my customer site and run my code there? Yes. That's kind of a redistribution kind of thing.
Yeah,
It's fine.
think of the on-premise one in the same way that you have any product where Microsoft gives it away for free. You're able to install it and do whatever you want with it all, and use it as part of your installation.
Like running the .NET framework.
Or
it's just like the
or C++ redistributables,
Yeah, there you
that
go.
sort of thing.
Um,
So free framework, grab it, just deploy it, and run your stuff there. Yep. Gary asks, how do I gracefully shut down guest containers? For example, if I was to host Elasticsearch in a guest container, and I wanted to ensure to shut down properly before the container exits, are there any lifecycle hooks we can tap into? Some of that available in Kubernetes. The only thing that you'll see for guests today, I think, is just a Control-C. They'll get a termination, sig term, sig, and then sig fault kind of stuff. In terms of lifecycle hooks, let us know what you're looking for. We don't typically do kind of like pre-notification, as in like somebody triggered a shutdown. It's more like please shut down now, but that's an asynchronous thing that can take time. If the thing inside the container is listening to those kind of sig term, sig fault signals, then it should be working fine already. But if it's not, let us know what you're seeing. And point us to what you're looking for in terms of comparison so that I can maybe just point you at the API or point you at something like that. There is all the HTTP stuff that can tell you kind of any upgrades are going on or stuff like that, but that's not probably what you're looking for. Racine asks, can you say something about work in progress and time frame for 6.0 or about open sourcing SF?
So open sourcing, we're going to release that out fairly soon here. We're just in the last stages of our legal reviews and whatnot. So that's pretty close. You can expect that pretty soon here.
And that's going to
programming models.
Yeah, that's for programming models. Yeah, not for the entire platform, but for the programming models. Yeah,
it's a start.
It's
and
a
we're
start.
going to learn some things.
We got to start somewhere. Yeah,
and we're going to go from there.
Yeah.
And then time frame for 6.0. I mean, what does 6.0 mean to you? If that's a particular feature that you're looking for, we can tell you when it's likely to show up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just, I mean, the thing to think about is, you know, we've just rolling out in the next week or so our 5.5 release, and you'll see that we do a point release about every 2 months. So the next one after that is going to be in a couple of months after that. You imagine it's going to be lined up with an event called Build.
Yeah, yes, you may have heard of it, right?
Yeah.
Nick asks, we want to set up environments for each feature branch that we're working on so our client app team can target them. A single VM in Service Fabric seemed like it'd do the trick. I'm in an old Word doc announcing dev test lab availability. It seems like there's no longer SF artifacts available. Is this deprecated?
Yeah.
Is this ancient?
So the only thing that is right, the artifact is no longer there. The only thing it did was actually installing what you install on your local dev box. So you can go ahead and do that. There's actually 2 ways you can get a cluster up and running in a one box. Install the SDK and tools packages from WebPI, Web Platform Installer, or use the standalone one cluster JSON template.
Yes. Yeah, that's one thing that people do. You can very easily take a single machine, install the Windows on-premise Service Fabric for a Windows server. You run a single PowerShell command. There's a dev. I posted it in the window as a screenshot. There's a dev, a single on-premise cluster configuration, and you literally do create Service Fabric cluster. You point it at that, and within 30 seconds, you have a cluster deployed on your machine, which you can use for testing.
Okay, do you have a link on how to change the node type? I originally picked A0 VMs, but I'd like to increase that if required. First, as a minor nit, we don't usually recommend A0s because those are like fractions of cores, and you're running. You might want to increase that just in case.
We've explicitly not supported these going forward.
Oh, okay. Well, going forward, we apparently won't even let you do that. But let's say you did, and now you want to get out of it. In Azure today, that's a VM scale set model change. So you would go to your VM scale set resource, and you would change the size of the VM and then do a post, and that would update the model, and then that deployment would swing through the cluster.
And it will do it in a safe way. So it will.
Yeah, if you're on silver durability or higher, it'll typically be safe. The idea though is that that's kind of one of those infrastructure level changes that's technically kind of underneath Service Fabric. We don't really see it. What we see is Azure comes along and says, hey, I want to take down these machines. Is that safe to do? And we kind of either say yes or no while we move and drain workloads out. So if you're doing that, though, that should be how it would go. You'd go to the VM scale set for that node type. You'd change the family or whatever they're calling it these days, and then post that resource back, and that would kick off that deployment. Dimitri says, what's the limit of one message in service remoting byte-wise? I think the default's probably like 50 megs.
It's 4 megabytes. 4 megabytes is the default, but of course that's configurable.
Yeah. Any plans to replace Fabric Transport Service Remoting Provider attribute with something runtime configurable?
Well, yeah, so that you can already do. That one's kind of almost legacy at this point. But when you go and create your communication listeners in your service code,
there's Fabric Transport settings.
Yeah, there's a constructor to create the remoting listener, and that's where you provide the transport. And in the transport, you can then configure and provide the settings like the max message size. So that's all
configure calls, all this stuff.
Yeah.
Fabric transport settings or something like that.
Yeah, there's Fabric transport settings. There you do max message size. There's a few other things that you can configure. Yeah. So that's all available. You can do that all programmatically.
Yep.
At runtime.
Good. Brendan asks, when is Service Fabric likely to support .NET Core? Is that coming with .NET Core 2, .NET Standard 2?
So the current plan is we're gonna support .NET Standard 2. So all the libraries that we should be able to manage libraries will be .NET Standard 2. The timeline will be against time later this year. Currently, we're kind of looking at around the time Linux goes GA, because then you'll probably want to do portable applications between Windows and Linux, and so .NET Core will be important there. So that's what we're targeting right now.
Okay. Gary, post the link to the Kubernetes stuff. I'll take a look at that and maybe shoot me a note or shoot us a note, and we can see if there's something similar.
I took a note.
Yeah, I'd say I know that we have things that are corollaries to these, but I don't know if you would use them the same way. Marcin says, regarding version upgrades, I could really use a VSTS task that allows to set the version of specific service only instead of the entire application package. But guys from VSTS team wanted to move this request to user voice, so they are not interested.
You can just make a pull request against the tasks. It's all open source and everything, so feel free to do that. But I just need to understand exactly what
I think it would be like a subtask. It'd be some part of within. So you did a build, you replaced just this one package, and you want to bump just that one package's version. You'd still need to bump the application version.
Yeah,
you have to do that regardless.
So maybe let's take it up and we can figure out what.
But I would like to keep versions of some packages and bump application versions and version of packages described by comma-separated list.
And you'd like that to be like under your control as opposed to something that the differential build is figuring out?
Yes, exactly. Yes, and no differential packages for this, but full packages, but just to keep the versioning under control here. So during upgrades, the application, those services that haven't changed are not restarted.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think all the bits and pieces you need is in the task we have out there. So create a fork of that, and and you can create your own task and provision that into your own VSTS instance for this. I don't think it's a big change to create something like that. So yeah.
And zero durability available? No, it's not yet. Yeah. It's coming. Yeah. So right now you have the gold, which is your D15 single dedicated machines, and you have your bronze, which is basically you don't get the full reliability guarantees. The silver allows you to have reliability guarantees on all the VM sizes. We're working through it right now. We've been just doing a lot of testing it with our internal services first, particularly Intune.
Yeah. And as usual, we're experimenting on our internal partners first.
And the Dynamics guys have been doing this a lot with us, and we've rolled out to a few other services. So it's coming now in the next few months as we make sure that it's fully fits with all the scenarios, because there's a number of different scenarios it deals with in terms of how machines get rebooted and patched, and basically the underlying VM provisioning system chooses to move your VMs around.
Dimitri asks, shall we expect any new programming models coming soon? I don't know of any that we have planned, but I think probably what we'll see is that more support for different collection types. Hopefully, we want to keep putting out those. Like there's a concurrent queue that we've had, so more data structures. And then as we open source the programming models, you'll see how to write your own programming models, and then you won't necessarily have to wait on us if you wanted to add more data structures or write different programming models on top.
Or port others to Service Fabric.
Sure.
I think I've seen a couple. Yeah, I've seen a couple projects on GitHub that attempted to place Akka.net on top of Service Fabric. So now at least you'll have the source code available to our actor framework, so you can see how we write things on the platform. So you may see other things pop up soon. But we internally, the team, we don't have plans right now to introduce completely new programming.
The ones we have are keeping us busy enough, as you might guess. Who owns the SFARM template in the Azure portal? Chaco, who's not here, so let's beat up on him.
Yes. I think, but to answer to the question, I think
yes,
by design.
Previously,
it's
all VMs.
It's a scale set thing.
Yeah.
The default scale set configuration is that you can, or you could, scale up to 100 instances, but there was a recommended limit of 20 VMs per storage account, which is basically why you get the 5.
Yeah, and but it is going to a single storage account these days is a bad practice now. So the templates were updated to not do that, to create multiple storage accounts. If they're getting the math wrong and creating more than they need, or maybe creating storage accounts in advance, I don't know quite what it's doing.
Well, there was a single point of failure as well.
Right. Yeah, but that's why multiple storage accounts.
There were two reasons. The one that Mikkel just said, and the other one was it was a single point of failure. So if you wanted to scale out the number of VMs, you had to do this anyway.
Yes.
If you wanted to get to that. So that was the primary reason.
But the question is just why is it creating empty ones? I think is part of the problem. So we'll go look at it.
Empty ones.
So
I mean, there's always two that collect logs and traces.
I've seen this as well, where it creates storage accounts for the VM scale sets that don't have any VM scale sets associated with them.
It creates 5 storage accounts by default.
Yes, but I think the thing is that if I have a small VM scale sets or a small number of VM scale sets, then some of them don't end up getting utilized. So we just need to go look at it.
But there's a follow-up question. I think what managed disks will change in regards to this. I have no idea.
I know this one. So managed disks will change this a little bit. One of the things about managed disks was that VM scale sets now have the ability with managed disks to go to thousands of VMs in a VM scale set. Service Fabric isn't ready to take advantage of that yet, and we're working with the VM scale set team to tweak some things about how they get to that scale that will let your Service Fabric VM scale sets that back your node types actually take advantage of that. It's not quite there yet, but we expect it should be soon.
But you can do it yourself if you want to switch it over to VM.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and absolutely. Managed disks are great. They're one of those things that we're glad to have.
That's the update.
So I think that we will look towards also having a template that shows you how to do managed disks as well.
That should be the next thing that we switch over to. Nick asks, is having 460 replicas on a node trying to execute backups likely to cause issues? Is it common or even possible to roll your own backup manager to orchestrate them in a staggered manner? So 460 replicas on a node itself is probably fine.
Depends on the size of the node.
And how much data they have and things like that. I haven't seen any particular problems related to that, but if they were massive, if they were, if this was a G machine and they were all trying to back up gigs of stuff simultaneously, then maybe. What you'd see in that case is likely not a problem or a failure, but probably just it would take longer. It would be just a time thing.
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, it's not really a problem. It's just, are you going to max out network or memory first or CPU first?
Yeah, and a lot of storage accounts have some connection limits as well, depending on how you set them up. So that's something else you could run into. Regarding a backup manager to orchestrate them, that is something that we're looking into. So we're going to be building kind of a backup manager service that would integrate with Azure Backup. That would have some of these knobs to let you do things in a more controlled manner. Today, what we say is for a given service, there should really just be a task there that's triggering backups periodically, say every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. The likelihood that all 460 of those replicas all kick off on the same exact 10-minute interval is low. So I don't know that you'd see this necessarily. But if a whole bunch did spin up at the same time, then it would probably be more of a load on the box issue, and then it depends upon the box or the account that you're talking to in order to actually where the backup goes. There's no real known limit on this from our perspective. Marcin asks, is it possible to reimage a single machine in VM scale sets? If you want to say pave it and reset it. I don't know if they expose that. I think they can.
Scale sets. I think you can even do it in the portal.
You can do it through the portal?
Just go into the instance view and select.
Yeah, I don't know the command.
There is this button in Portal that says Reimage a node, but it says it doesn't work with Service Fabric. So it's why I ask, because it would make me feel a bit safer.
Yeah, as a question, is that a gold durability cluster or is that bronze?
Bronze.
Yeah. So what's happening is that because it's not safe, in the sense that because in bronze you don't get any real guarantees, it's not letting you do that. We might let you do that, but then you're taking your life in your own hands. The reason that would probably exist in a gold cluster is because that's where all the health integration with the rest of the Azure infrastructure comes in. Because again, remember the VM scale sets are underneath us. So what would happen is that Azure would come and want to pave that box. If that's the last copy of a system service or one of your services, or if your application isn't healthy at that time, we want to stall that until Service Fabric gets a chance to evacuate the machine. So I expect that this would work in Silver once it exists, but we should check to make sure that it's not getting blocked. Maybe since you're on bronze, you're on bronze anyway. Maybe we should just allow it because you're already running bronze. But yeah, that's a thing.
I'm feeling lucky.
Yeah. Just roll the dice. Like, it's okay.
I think that would not be safe for bronze.
No, it wouldn't be safe. It wouldn't be safe, but that's the point. You're already on bronze, so maybe we should just let people pave their box if they really want to.
It would destroy their cluster or hurt them badly.
Yeah. Yes. It would.
Yeah.
Not be
And that's why we don't recommend running on bronze. It would be great if this ARM template supported managed disk. Mark got it. Yep. What about support pub sub between actors? Currently, it's only from actor to client, as far as I know. Yeah, and that you're talking about the actor events.
Yeah, that's events. Yeah. I mean, we don't have a pub sub framework. There are a couple of good ones out on GitHub you can check out though that build around it. But we're not currently developing a pub sub mechanism for actors right now. But it's something that it's kind of on a roadmap. We're just not there yet.
Yeah, it's on a roadmap. There's one that's been published. I'll put a link in the window about Paolo Salvatore that we've had quite a few people use.
And one of our community members too, Loic, he's got a pretty good one up on GitHub too that I recommend checking out.
Yeah, that's at the communication listener level. So you'd stub it in kind of below, and then you'd have to dispatch them yourself. It'd be weird, but you can do it.
Yeah.
Is introducing Azure Service Bus queues between actor services a reasonable way to tolerate outages if one on-service actor types is down? Have you seen any good ways of running this on box so we don't need to reach outside the cluster?
Actually, the only one I've seen here is I've seen a number of customers who use Rabbitmq for deployment and use that talking between them, because there's no on-premise installation of
for most Azure services.
Azure. I mean, there's a version of Service Bus for on-premise, but it's being deprecated.
Yeah, that's old stuff.
And you can't install it on the same box as us.
And you can't install the same box as us.
It uses us.
So if you are going to use something on-prem, between things as a queue, Rabbitmq is a way to go to do that sort of stuff.
Yeah, we've seen, and maybe some of this will change as the Azure Stack, Azure on-prem stuff happens, that you won't have to call out to the cloud. But there's no way to use those Azure services today that we're aware of. So typically some third-party thing. It's kind of like why we say all this Azure diagnostic stuff is great in Azure. Please use it. If you want something that is the same or similar that will work both in Azure and on-prem, that's where you end up with ELK. So it's kind of in that same question. It's kind of in that same zone for any other Azure service as well. Kale says, would you recommend Rabbitmq on all nodes in the cluster or a separate resource for VM? I don't know. It depends on how much load you're really throwing onto the thing. I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other.
I've just seen on-premise ones where people have put it and used it on all machines inside the cluster, and they're just calling between services.
Yeah.
So that's where I've seen it particularly happen. And I think they actually took that to Azure as well, but I'll have to go back and check.
Yes, it would be the same in both environments.
Yeah.
All right.
You posted some files, Mike?
I think I posted it 4 times. my image of did I post a file?
Where is it?
I think there's a shared file in the meeting that Mark posted.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is.
It just shows a screenshot of the on-premise installer that just shows you the JSON files for creating a cluster there. That's all it is.
Okay. Nick has another question regarding backup. In the web reference sample, they keep track of the number of backups in a reliable dictionary. Is there any significance to this, or is it just for fun? It's not used for cleanup. Yeah, it should be used for cleanup. I did it just to show that this is where you want to keep track so you're not taking backups too often. Like, say you took a backup and immediately died, you wouldn't have any record of it. It's also there so that it's easy to query. So if the service flops over to another machine, you can still interrogate it and ask, how many backups have you taken? It should be used for cleanup so that there's only X backups sitting in the blob store, and then you can trim them. And it should be used for more things like that. But yeah, as of today, it's mainly just for fun.
When will the party cluster start up
When
again?
will the party start again? Oh yeah, so we're working on something pretty new. I don't know if we can talk about it yet, but we're working on something new and exciting around that.
Talk
so
about it.
Well, then, I mean, we're going to be. I mean, our desire is to get these stood up again in the next.
In the next couple of months, it should be up again.
We were just doing another. We were actually doing some security reviews on them first, and then putting them back up again. So you'll see them appear again soon.
Yeah. Yeah, they're fun. Nick asks, any estimate on custom serializer support for reliable actors? Are you talking about for the state within the actors or the communication between actors? Comms.
Communication. That's actually in the works too. So that's in the remoting stack in general. So it's service remoting, which the actor communication is built on top of that. We're working on let you do custom serialization just in remoting in general. So that'll apply to actors as well. That's in the pipe. That's coming at some point here soon.
Any conferences the team is planning to speak at? Workshops?
Well, I'm going down to the Games Developers Conference at the beginning of March because we're doing quite a lot of work around it. It turns out to be quite a few gaming customers who are building frameworks on top of Service Fabric. And in fact, as part of that, I'm working on hoping to publish a framework from actually one of our customers who's actually going to open source a lot of code that they use to build games on to help you start building your own games on top of it all. It'll show a lot of very cool features, like in terms of a SignalR gateway and how to create sessions and do a bunch of failover. So anyway, I'm going to the Gaming Developers Conference, and of course there's going to be Build coming up.
I think those are the main ones on our roadmap.
I think those are the main ones.
If you know of any you think we should do, let us know.
There is, at least on the Microsoft Virtual Academy, for those who haven't seen it, there's some good content there. We did a best practices day and other stuff. We'll catch up on that.
And Jeffrey Richter's training as well as on MBA.
Yeah. And I'm going to be re-recording the Games Developers Conference talk on the 22nd of March because it's all, because they own all the rights to it all, but we're going to just recreate it all again and post that. So by the end of March, you'll see that talk redone.
Okay.
And this example I'm going to publish. I mean, I'm still working through it all, but it's early days. But it's going to be a very good example of using SignalR to communicate over a gateway.
Mm-hmm. Marcina asked, do you plan to support direct HTTP support for actors?
Yeah, it's something we're kind of exploring it a little bit right now, actually, and looking at different use cases for it. Nothing for sure yet, but we are looking at it. Yeah.
When you say, I'd also like to know when you say direct HTTP, what do you mean exactly? Where it's just going through the reverse proxy, or you are hitting an actor directly on some HTTP API that's exposing its methods, or do you just want HTTP to be the transport that all of the existing actor proxy stuff kind of operates over?
I would be happy to see some access through reverse proxy. It's the best one. I love reverse proxy. I use reverse proxy for everything. So I would be happy to use reverse proxy instead of remoting to talk to my actors, and I would be really happy about this. I will be happy to drop the retry guarantee, which is guaranteed by the remoting. Because I am aware that there's issue with retransmitting the HTTP message because this message is not stored in memory anywhere. So I would be happy to drop this guarantee and handle retries on my own, but just to be able to stream the message through HTTP through reverse proxy to the correct actor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Brendan asks if we're having issues with Service Fabric for Linux, deploying from Visual Studio using ASP.NET Core as guest. Who do we contact to work through it? Previously, don't do it here. Yeah. I think the issue list is good, and then if it's something we can't sort it out,
You have the support options article.
Yeah.
It will take you through the GitHub issue lists and stuff where you can just post these very specific.
But I would start there, and then if it's something we need to take offline and deal with in more detail, and you don't want to share those details publicly, then the right people will be watching that, and we can jump in. David says SignalR example would be great. It took me about a month to get right. I hate to tell the people have to go through that. Yeah, I've got a stateless one that I can share for others. That's going to become a part of a sample sooner or later. But yeah, it's hard. And if you're looking for the backplane stuff, I don't know that we have an example of that yet.
Yeah, I don't know of one yet, but I'm assuming that's what you're asking for, is a SignalR backplane on a stateless service.
Yeah, and if you have that working, that would be great.
Which we think is a really cool scenario, and it's something that we'd like to get out there.
Yeah, I'm working on hacking one of those up, but it is a bit of a pain, as you encountered. Part of that is that the SignalR backplane APIs are a bit mystical, but that's something we can work at. So let's see. Let's see here. We're running out of time, so I'm trying to find any other major questions here. How do we possibly do HTTP to actor instances because you would have a port conflict? Well, HTTP really only port conflicts on if the full path is the same. So if the rest of your URI segment is different, HTTP, at least HTTP sys on Windows, does a good job of disambiguating those things.
Yeah.
If it's not HTTP sys or if it's on Linux, you end up with different ports. And that's fine.
It's totally possible though. We do it today with just stable services.
Same way you do it for reliable services, SignalR and actor events. Guys, if you can share this stuff, please do. It's really great to see as many examples and stuff like that. And plus, it saves me having to hack it out in my office. So anything I don't have an office anymore. That's a Twitch. Yes. I'm free range. Don't need backplane because your connect event can create an object that gets actor events. Yeah, that's interesting. Are there any reference implementations of incremental backups around? I'd like to sanity check how we're doing it. It seems to work. Yeah, that's another thing that I wanted to add to the web reference app is to actually do incremental ones instead of it just does full ones all the time. So
we'll take that as a note. I think we'll.
David, get in touch with me. I can do what I can. We can talk about it so that other people don't have to do all this stuff.
Yeah, send it over, David. Actually, that'd be great to take a look at.
Yeah, Boss and I'll take a look. Yeah. All right, we're gonna wrap it up. I think we're out of time.
All right. Hopefully, get you guys.
David, stay on the chat box, and we'll send you contact information.
Yeah, that's easy. But thank you everybody for calling in. It's good to see you all.
Yes.
Good to hear from some of you.
Yes, thank you.
See you in a month's time.
Yeah, see you on the next third Thursday.
And remember, if you have a demo that you want to show for next time during the first 10 minutes, let us know.
Yeah, get in touch and we can tell you how to do these types of things.
And how do you get in touch?
And how do you get in touch?
Should we put your email address up there?
Sure. I mean, it's my name.
There you go.
What is it?
Yeah, it's not. You can do Matthew.Snyder@Microsoft.com and it should show up at me. There you go.
There you go. David, David, go ahead and get in touch with Matt on that email address. And
yeah, let me know.
And great demo.
Yes, thank you.
Service Fabric Auto
Thank you for coming in. Cool. And we want to see more of these types of things. That was a lot of fun, and thank you for doing it. Have you made me susceptible to all the
spam in the world? I just need to get your last name right.
And you can't see it. And you can't see it. That's cool.
At least you can see it.
Oh, I can see it. You just wrote Matt.Snyder, is that right?
No.
I think it's your full name.
No. You cool.
Matthew, me. Yeah, my full name. As my mother intended.
I think I got it.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
How's that?
No, it doesn't show up. It's showing up as a blue mail to link inside of the blue window. Well, so I think it works fine.
Well, I think I know how to spell Matthew. So
yeah, give it a shot. It's 4 T's, right?
5.
Okay, good.
Wait.